After parents have satisfied the basic needs of a child, food, water, shelter, air, the things that are required to stay alive, the primary responsibilities of parents are to love, unconditionally love, and teach their children. And you can't separate those two functions, which is why I usually say our primary responsibility is to love and teach simultaneously. If we only what we think is love, in other words, satisfy the desires or demands of our children, all we do is just give and hug them and satisfy everything that they want, that's just enabling. It spoils them. It turns out entitled children who don't know how to do anything. If all we do is teach, then we just become endless lecturers. Children don't hear our teaching without our loving. They don't really feel loved unless we're also teaching them. That's our job, to teach them. They can go to Disney World to be entertained, but they can only come to us to be truly loved and taught. So we're going to be talking about that a lot. And it takes a lifetime, no kidding, to learn how to really get good at loving and teaching our children. But in the beginning, we can at least eliminate the obstacles to loving and teaching, the obstacles to being happy as a family. And everybody understands what it means to eliminate some obstacles, to have a zero tolerance for some things that are sufficiently destructive that you can't do the thing that you had designed to do. So, for example, you're learning to ride a bicycle in the beginning. That takes a little while to get really good at, but everybody understands that at least in the beginning, you don't try to ride a bicycle without wheels. There's a zero tolerance for riding a bicycle without wheels, or learning in the beginning to ride in downtown traffic or on the interstate. Everybody gets that. There's commercial jets are very cool things, but there's a zero tolerance for going up into the cockpit and shoving the pilot aside and taking the plane for a spin. There's zero tolerance to throwing lit matches or lit cigarette butts in a drought-stricken forest. There's a zero tolerance for playing baseball or football in a museum of priceless paintings and sculptures. So everybody understands what zero tolerance means. Not you don't play football very often in a museum where one painting on the wall may be worth $100 million. No, you never play football. And there are people there to make sure that you don't. Security people. It is the same in a family. We have to have an absolutely zero tolerance for these 5 things. Yes, there are some others, like don't drink poison, but these are the main 5 that interfere with loving and teaching. You can learn a lot more about them at reallove.com and realloveparents.com. I'll keep referring to those bigger sites that contain more material, but I'm going to give you the abbreviated answer that you can start applying today. So in your family, especially when a family is confined together in one space, there is zero tolerance for anger, for whining, for teasing, for lying, and for withdrawing. Anger, whining, teasing, lying, withdrawing. In fact, I would highly recommend that you get to the point where you can name those 5 things in your sleep when you're drunk. Well, not recommending you get drunk. And that your children be able to do the same. That they be able to name the things that there's a zero tolerance for. Now, when I say zero tolerance, I'm not saying you can suddenly just stop ever being angry. What I mean is there's a zero tolerance for these things without discussing them. So a practical example was sent to me not long ago by a mother who was describing her 12-year-old boy who has a long-standing habit of teasing his 10-year-old sister. This is not rare. Mom has talked about it to the boy on many occasions, but he was doing it again on this occasion. He was teasing his sister about who knows, the way she was drawing, the way she was eating, doesn't matter. Mom came up because she's talked about this before. And you have an opportunity to set this precedent with your family, saying there's a zero tolerance for these things. And she simply said to her son, instead of saying, stop that, which is singularly stupid, telling somebody who's doing something that they already know is wrong and say, stop that, if they'd been inclined to stop it, they wouldn't be doing it now. She said, what are you doing? Which requires him to think about it and requires him to put it in his words. Well, I've been a parent for a very long time and talked with a few thousand parents. What do you guess his answer was? He looked at her with this beatific innocence and said, nothing. Predictably, Mom said, well, that's clearly not true, because when I walked into the room, you were doing something and your sister was reacting to it. So she wasn't reacting to nothing and you weren't doing nothing. So that's not true. So let's try it again. What were you doing? He said, well, just talking. She, referring to his sister, she's just so sensitive. When we're caught in the middle of making an obvious mistake, when we're caught in the middle of being unloving and unkind, oh, we just love to make excuses. Not just kids, adults do it too. And Mom said, so take your time, relax, you're not in trouble, nobody's going to hit you. I'm not angry. Notice, Mom is already keeping the first of the 5 things that we have zero tolerance for, anger. She says, I'm not angry at you. You have to mean that when you say it. She says, I have all day. I'm going to sit here, and if necessary, we're going to take all day. And you have all day and all night to sit right here with me, and we're not going to do anything else until after we talk about this. Talk about what you're doing. And the boy, after considerable help, said, because he'd heard the family discussion about zero tolerance, he said, I was teasing her. And you've all heard that tone of voice when somebody's finally been nailed to the wall about something they're doing. She said, keep going, and she kept helping him. It took some time, but he said, I was teasing her. When I feel bad myself, or I feel lonely, or I just don't have anything to do, I can tease her, and instantly I get a hit of excitement or power even, like I have a sense of control over her. Oh, yes, that's the truth. So Mom didn't come in and just make him stop teasing her. That would have done no good at all. When she left the room, he'd have gone right back to it. What she required was him to talk about it. And she finally had taken a stand of pointing out every single time he did it. If you point out to a child something that they do that you have a zero tolerance for 9 out of 10 times, well, then it turns into a trip to Las Vegas, and they take the gamble. They go, I'll take my chances. And gradually her son teased less and less because he didn't like seeing what he was really doing, being selfish and exercising control and power over his sister. He didn't like see what he was doing versus the story he had told himself in his head. This is probably the only principle from basic psychology I remember from college, and that is something called cognitive dissonance. People don't like it means the difference, cognitive dissonance, between what we see is true and what we think is true, or what we want to be true. And that just makes us crazy. So either we go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole into making excuses for what we're doing, or we change our behavior so that it's now consistent with what is true. If you go sufficiently far down the rabbit hole, you literally can make yourself schizophrenic. So zero tolerance has utterly transformed this 12-year-old kid where he doesn't keep teasing his sister. And it works just as well for anybody else. So anybody that has a question about their child, about their parenting, that's what we're here to talk about. That just gives you one example of how to very practically love and teach your children. So what we'll do is, that was a really good example of loving and teaching and of zero tolerance. And each weekday that we meet here at 1 o'clock, we're going to discuss a principle that I bring to you to get things started, and then we're going to discuss your questions. We don't have any questions right now, and so we'll conclude this session, and we'll meet again at 1 o'clock tomorrow.